Peace. Tadvam yajnanam advayam Vaimriti paramatmeti Bhagavaniti shabdyate Vedanti, they say, Tat, that, Tattva Vida, the learned souls, Tattvam, the absolute truth, Yat, which, Jnanam, knowledge, Advayam, non-dual, Brahma iti, known as Brahman, Paramatma iti, known as Paramatma, Bhagavan iti, known as Bhagavan, Shabdyate, it so sounded. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Purport. The absolute truth is both subject and object, and there is no qualitatively difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. Paramatma is a partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization. But those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspectives seen from different angles of vision. As it is explained in the first sloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the Supreme Truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusions of relativity. In the material world, the knower is different from the known. But in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same thing. In the relative world, the knower is a spirit, living spirit, or superior energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior energy. Therefore, there is a duality of inferior and superior energy. Whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are of the same superior energy. There are three kinds of energies of the supreme energetic. There is no difference between the energy and the energetic, but there is a difference of quality of energies. The absolute realm and the living entities are the same superior energy, but the material world is inferior energy. The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusion, thinking he belongs to the inferior energy. Therefore, there is the sense of relativity in the material world. In the absolute, there is no such sense of difference between the knower and the known, and therefore everything there is absolute. Vedanti tat tattva vidas tattva yaj jnanam avayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswatunde Ve Gauravani Vacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Bhaskyatyade Siddharna. As explained here, that actually we're in the spiritual world. Just like in the Slovenia or Ljubljana, I believe there must be a prison house here. Is there a prison somewhere here? Yes. Of course. Oh, there's many prisons. So the prison is not outside the country, not outside Ljubljana. It's part of Ljubljana, but it's not the nicest place to live. Although I believe the rent must be free there. Probably they also give you food for free. So in one sense, sometimes people desire to remain in the prison because it's a better life than they have outside. But in the case of the material world, where we're living, it's the prison house of the spiritual world. But it's the prison house only for those who want to be in the prison. Otherwise, if one desires not to be in the prison, even here, if one wants to act in the as a free person, as a free soul, that's possible, even here in the material world, if we so desire. But it takes some understanding, and that understanding is not very complicated. Gata sangasya muktasya gyanavasita chetasaha ija charata karma samagram praviliyate. The work of a person is unattached to the modes of material nature and is fully situated in transcendental knowledge, merges entirely into transcendence. In other words, if we act in devotional service, if we act in the mode of goodness, if we wash our hands before we eat prasadam, and afterwards, for instance, if we learn what does it mean to act in the modes of goodness, at least, or pure goodness. For instance, speaking in goodness, who knows what speaking in goodness means? Austerity of speech and goodness. Well, if we don't know what it is, then we don't know if we're doing it. That's one thing. Priti is pleasing. Anything else? That's right, that's good. So we have three. It should be truthful, not pleasing. It should be pleasing, and shouldn't disturb others. And what else? Sounds good. What does that mean? Yes, that's also there. Brujal, yeah. In Russian it would be gloopy. We не может глупи. Мы можем глупи. So anuvega karam vakyam sattva priyahitam chayat swadhyaya vyasanam chaiva vangmana tapa uchate. Anuvega means not to agitate people when we're speaking, not to disturb their minds. Because if we disturb their minds, then they can't hear anything. If you disturb someone's mind, you might as well stop talking because they're not going to hear anything you're saying. And probably because you disturbed their minds, your mind is going to be disturbed also. And so you won't hear what you're saying either. Anuvega karam vakyam satyam. Truthful, priya, pleasing. Hita. What does hita mean? Beneficial. We should say something beneficial. We should try to benefit others. Hita priya. Satyam priya hitam chaya swadaya bhyasanam chaiva. And it should be according to some spiritual authority, some genuine authority. So that's called austerity in speech. And if we speak, because speaking is a manifestation of intelligence, how we speak shows where our intelligence is, how refined our intelligence is. Then if we speak with refined intelligence, what's the purpose of it? Just to show how intelligent we are. Manak prasadam somya tvam monam atma vinigraha bhava samshridir ityetad tapo manasam uchite. Our center of concern, we should say, is our mind. Because if our mind is in the mode of goodness, then we're peaceful. If it's transcendental, if we're thinking about Krishna, then we can become blissful. If our mind is in the mode of passion, then we're agitated. And if our mind is in the mode of ignorance, then we're dull, sleepy, or whatever. So we want our mind to be transcendental. So we're speaking in such a way as to give information how to put our mind on Krishna. So what is the whole purpose of sadhana bhakti? What are we here for according to the Padma Purana? Does anyone know? Anyone who's taken the Bhakti Shastri, the nectar of devotion? What is the whole purpose of what we're doing? Yes. Yes, exactly. What's the Sanskrit? That's you get extra points for that. Smartavyak sadatam Vishnu, vismartak jatu na kinchit, sarva vidi nisedyasyur, atyar eva kinkara. Smartavyak, to always remember. Smartavyak sadatam Vishnu, always remember Vishnu. Vismartak means to forget. Vismartak nahi kinchit, at no time. Nikagda in Russian. Never forget him. Nikagda ni zavit Vishnu. Never forget Krishna. Sarva eti visedyasyur. Of all the rules and regulations, that is, there's things that we're supposed to do, and there's things that we're not supposed to do. What we're supposed to do is called vidi, and what we're not supposed to do is called nisheda. So we're always supposed to remember Krishna, but we're never supposed to forget him. And if we do that, then we've fulfilled all the Vedic scriptures. And if we do that, then the result is, it's called Krishna consciousness. To remember Krishna is called Krishna consciousness. And to forget him is called what? What happens when we forget Krishna? Where are we? You're in Maya. That's right, we're in Maya. So, the whole idea is that we want to come, Prabhupada was saying in the lectures in 1966, to his beginning lectures, he wasn't emphasizing Bhagavan, because people, if you told, I remember one time, I was listening, one of the first lectures Prabhupada gave, I was there at a university. Prabhupada mentioned the name of God in the lecture, and half the students got up and left. So Prabhupada didn't usually mention about, sometimes he talked about the supreme energy, the force. But generally speaking, Prabhupada talked about consciousness, that we're trying to discover who has this consciousness. So that's our first endeavor. Understand clearly what's the difference between ourselves and this body. What's the difference between the activities of this, how does this body work, or what is our connection to the activities of this body? And how does the body work? Kshetra, kshetragaya evam antara jnana chakshusha buddha prakriti moksham cha ye vidur yanti te param. Jnana chakshus. We're trying to acquire jnana chakshus. We're not trying to memorize millions of slokas, although it's nice. If you, at least 500,000 would be good. We're not trying to simply understand things intellectually. We're trying to develop jnana chakshus, to actually see through the eyes of the scriptures. In other words, we can hear the knowledge theoretically, and that will certainly help us, but we have to apply it. And when we apply it, then Krishna may give us Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. When he talks about Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam, he's not just talking about theoretical knowledge, he's talking about realized knowledge. Buddhi Yogam. Buddhi Yoga is realized knowledge. There's one thing to hear that theoretically everyone is a spirit soul, and it's different from to actually see how everyone is a spiritual soul. One is that we have to struggle to act appropriately. The other is just natural. Just like if you're 5 years old and you hear that there's a difference between that little girl, she's 2 years old, and you, one is a boy and one is a girl, you probably can't figure it out, what it means. But when you grow up and you're 15, 20 years old, you suddenly, or you're 15 years old, you suddenly understand what it means, the difference between a man and a woman. At least it used to be like that. So similarly, when we acquire theoretical knowledge, it's very important, because then we can at least see if we're doing something wrong. And if someone says you're acting incorrectly, then we may appreciate that and try to correct ourselves. But when we have realized knowledge, it's just spontaneous. It's just part of our nature. It becomes our habit or our character. So we're trying to go from, we're here in the class to acquire theoretical knowledge, to upgrade our understanding so we can act more appropriately. And when we act more appropriately, then Krishna reciprocates with us. And he reveals what we thought was theory, what we understood was theory, it becomes experiential, it becomes experience, it becomes part of our character. So as I said before, to realize the Supreme begins with theory, and then we have to assimilate the knowledge. So in Bhagavad Gita, there's 18 chapters, and more or less it says the same thing in 18 chapters, but from different points of view. So if we read every chapter and try to see how does it fit into the last chapter, how does it fit into the whole perspective, then we start assimilating the knowledge. And what we wind up with is the same thing over and over again. Do service for Krishna steadily and do it enthusiastically. Enthusiastically generally means, what is enthusiasm? What's the definition of enthusiasm according to Nectar of Instruction? Yes, endeavor with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called enthusiasm. So if we have enthusiasm, Everyone has enthusiasm. But if we have enthusiasm for Krishna consciousness, then we make spiritual advancement. It's a question of what we're enthusiastic about. And to acquire enthusiasm, we have to give up this voice that's talking to us, telling us why we should not be enthusiastic. We have a preacher right inside our brain or our mind that's constantly preaching to us. And therefore we have to hear from the other preachers externally, from Paramatma and his representatives, so that we understand who to listen to. Andaya tandir Natevidu swartagatim hi Vishnu darashaya ye barhir arthamanina. There's one side telling us this body is very important. Your position, your status, your prestige, your wealth, all this is vitally important, importance for your happiness. Don't give it up no matter who tells you what. Don't believe them. And then there's the other side telling us, give it up, give up this false prestige, give up your attachment for a material situation. At any moment, you may have to leave this body. And what you're going to take, what can you take with you? And then mind says, oh, don't listen to them, you know. They don't know how to live in the material world and be happy. You can do it. I have faith in you. So there's a battle. It's called Udarat Atmanatmanam Atmanam Avasadayat Admaiva Yatmano Bandur Atmaiva Ripur Atmana. A person has to elevate himself by his own mind and not degrade himself. The mind can be the friend of the conditioned soul and his enemy as well. Evam Bude Puram Budva Samstabhyatmanam Atmana Jahi Shaitru Mahabaho Kamarupam Darasadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to material senses, mind, and intelligence, one should control the lower self by the higher, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. In other words, we ourselves will realize we're spiritual souls when we start acting as a spirit soul. That's all we have to do. And how does a spirit soul act? He makes decisions. He makes the right decisions. He decides that he's going to elevate himself. Evam Bude Puram Budva. He's going to use his intelligence to elevate himself and tolerate the urges of the senses and the mind. And instead fix his consciousness on Krishna. Even in the midst of the disturbance of the senses and mind, he's still going to try to think about Krishna. He's going to try to act for Krishna. And that means he's conquering this insatiable enemy of lust. Of course, trying means simply we're desiring. We're using our will to desire. That's all the soul can do, is use his will to desire correctly. If he hears correctly, from the right source, with the right attitude, and then desire to fulfill those desires. That's how Krishna sees our sincerity. Or as Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita, when the spiritual master sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses him with genuine spiritual understanding. So Krishna and the devotees, they work together to help the souls elevate themselves to higher consciousness. In other words, if we simply accept that there is a Paramatma, and if we're confused, if we're bewildered, if we're depressed, we can ask Krishna, we can actually inquire from him. What's going on? What should I do? And then whatever we hear Paramatma, and Paramatma, he speaks the same thing he spoke to Arjuna 5,000 years ago. But if we can't hear, if we don't know what Krishna spoke to Arjuna 5,000 years ago in the Bhagavad Gita, we can always inquire from an authorized source. What's an authorized source? Does anyone know? Who's authorized? This is all very mysterious. If someone's, yes? Yes, those who, how do you represent Krishna? Yes, you repeat the same message that Krishna said. Now someone may repeat the same message that Krishna says, but we have to understand what it is. In other words, the best representative of Krishna knows what we're thinking and what we desire, what we need, if we're actually sincere, and then he gives us the information necessary to apply within our lives to actually realize Krishna, to get free from the mode of ignorance, where we're depressed, the mode of passion, where we're in anxiety, the mode of goodness, where we're usually complacent, and come to the platform of transcendence. In other words, when it says when the spiritual master sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In other words, if one is actually in contact with Paramatma, and Paramatma is telling such a devotee what this other devotee actually wants, when he actually wants spiritual advancement, then the spiritual master gives him real knowledge. And if he wants something else other than spiritual advancement, then the spiritual master gives the disciple what he wants. Usually, unless you're in class, and then you're free to say whatever you want in class. I mean, anything Krishna conscious in class. Even people don't like it. But it should be as pleasing as possible, of course. We want to make it as attractive as possible. In other words, in order to understand even our own selves, we require help. And that help comes from Paramatma. And Paramatma is situated in everyone's heart, all the devotees' hearts. And therefore we have to recognize when Paramatma is speaking to us, so we have to understand what Bhagavad Gita says, what Srimad Bhagavatam says. Otherwise, we won't be able to understand. Someone may give us factual spiritual knowledge, but we may mistake it for something mundane or something that doesn't apply to us. And someone may give us the most nonsensical knowledge, and if we're not familiar with Bhagavad Gita or other scriptures, with what Krishna actually has said, we may take it as my goal of life. We may take it as genuinely spiritual, especially in this age that we're born. What is that verse in Srimad Bhagavatam that we read already? About how in the age of Kali, Prayena, Yalpusha, Shabdya, Kalavasmin Yuge Jana. Madhyo, Manda Bhagyu Padrita. So we took birth in Kali Yuga. It's not Satyuga, by the way. It's not the golden age. And therefore, Manda, what does Manda mean? Slow, actually. It means slow. So we're a little slow to catch up the importance of spiritual knowledge. That actually, in spite of the fact that we're nice people, we might even leave our bodies sometimes. Can you believe that? Of course not. No one in Slovenia leaves their body. It's a nice country. We might even have to leave and we don't know where we're going. And we're slow to understand that basic fact, to accept it. Manda, sumanda. So what is sumanda? Su means nice, so we're nicely slow. No, it doesn't mean nicely slow. What's that? Actually, even I don't know what it means. Manda, sumanda bhatiyo. Sumanda. Manda, lazy. Actually means lazy. Sumanda, misguided. Mateo. Mataya means where I put our consciousness. Sumanda. So manda means lazy or slow, and sumanda means misguided. So even we're interested in finding out what spiritual knowledge is, generally we go to someone who's going to tell us something completely different from reality. We want to get cheated. We're misguided. It's like going to a grocery store to buy gold, and someone brings out a pound of butter from the freezer. And you say, well, this doesn't look like gold, but it's yellow. But it's not so. This is light gold. This is a very special kind of gold. And we only give it to you for half price. Instead of 2,000 euros, this is only 1,000 euros per ounce. And this is only 8 ounces. So you owe me 16,000 euros for a pound of butter. You say, wow, that's a deal. Maybe I can sell it to my friends. So that's called misguided. Manda sumanda matya, manda bhagya, unlucky. Even when we get the right source, even when we get the right knowledge to tell us who we are, how to take shelter of Paramatma, what the goal of life is, we're so unlucky we can't accept it. We just don't take it seriously. We have the greatest opportunity. We're given the perfect knowledge, perfect opportunity to apply the knowledge, and yet we think, so what? Big deal. Mandabhag upadruta. And even when we try to apply the knowledge in our lives, our minds are so disturbed, it's like we're trying to race through a fog. We don't know where we're going. We're trying to figure it out. People are giving us good directions. We know exactly, we have a good map, but we're trying to get through a fog without any headlights. Upadruta, because our minds are disturbed. Mandabhagi upadrutaha. So we have to regulate our lives. In other words, this padayatra is very nice because we go at a certain time. We know what we're supposed to do, chant Hare Krišna. We know we're supposed to find people there and give them books, give them prasadam. It's all very simple and all very devotional. And even if our minds are disturbed, after a while, after some time, the mind has to surrender. Because if we don't listen to all the complaints, it's too hot out here, people aren't friendly, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I'm tired. But when we keep on going on, then after a while the mind gives up. Okay, I can't fool you, I can't do anything. I might as well listen. Then the fog goes away. We think, wow, I'm liberated. I'm actually there. It's not as bad as I thought it was. My mind has gone away. It's become my friend. I never thought my mind could be my friend. I actually like what I'm doing for the first time. It's not complaining anymore. Where are you? Oh, don't worry, I'm here. Just wait till you stop. I'll be back with you. So that's the process of realizing we're spiritual beings. This is Paramatma helping us. Krishna has made all the arrangements for us. And then eventually not only Paramatma will be able to remember Krishna, we'll be able to hear the holy name and experience his presence, experience Srimati Radharani's presence, and then everything goes very quickly after that in terms of self-realization. So in the beginning it's a struggle, and at the end it's just like nectar. But we have to go through the struggle. So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions? Or I'll just tell one more story. When Indradyumna Maharaj was traveling with Srila Prabhupada from New Mayapur in France to England. He was traveling on the same plane. And when he got there was a big greeting for Prabhupada at the airport in London. But Prabhupada's luggage was late. So Prabhupada's servant told Indraduma Maharaj, who was a householder at the time, to stay back and pick up Prabhupada's luggage. So he had to wait. Meanwhile, everyone was back in the temple. There was a big greeting for Prabhupada, kirtan, lecture, feast, and Indraduma Maharaj, some hours later, trying to drag Prabhupada's luggage, heavy luggage. Finally, he gets to the manor, the Bhaktivedanta manor, drags the luggage up the stairs because no one wanted to help him because they were so full with prasadam, he couldn't move. He gets to Prabhupada's rooms on the second floor, knocks on the door, drags the luggage in, and Prabhupada comes out. And Indraduma Maharaj pays obeisances, and then he feels a big slap on his back. So Indraduma Maharaj, Prabhupada walks away, and Indraduma Maharaj is bewildered. What happened? So the servant said, well, Prabhupada, he came by and he slapped you on the back. He said, don't worry, here everything's very difficult. When you get to the spiritual world, it'll all be very easy. Hare Krishna. Any questions or comments? Yes.
Thank you for inspiring lecture. I just wanted to ask, when you mentioned the importance of desire for spiritual knowledge, so I just wanted to ask, what is the thing that enables one to really develop this strong desire? What enables this?
Two phases. Arjuna asked the same question, by the way. So Krishna gave him answers in different chapters for that. In one chapter he says, Arjuna asked, Asamshaya Mahabaho Manodana Nirgraham Jalam Abhyasena Tukontiya Vairagya. Actually, that's Krishna's answer. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Samshaya Mahabaho Manodana Nirgraham Jalam Abhyasena Tukontiya Vairagya Kriyate. Is it undoubtedly difficult to curb the restless mind, O Arjuna, but it's possible by suitable practice and by detachment. In other words, the mind will be fixed on Krishna by two ways: becoming detached from the things that draw the mind away from Krishna, and becoming attached to the things that put our minds on Krishna. So we have to recognize the two things. One is, what are the activities that put my mind on Krishna, and concentrate our minds when we're performing those activities on Krishna, and become aware of how Maya will try to draw my mind away from Krishna, and become detached from those activities that might draw my mind away from Krishna. Then, what happens is that Krishna reveals himself, and then we become eventually super desirous of obtaining Krishna, because there's so much pleasure and there's so much happiness. Just like if there's nice prasadam, that no one has to encourage anyone to show up for the prasadam. As a matter of fact, if you want to find out how many devotees are actually in the temple, you have to wait for prasadam. And if someone's not there, it's probably because they're deathly sick. So you should go and try to help them, maybe call the hospital or something. So when we get a higher taste, when we experience in our attempts to fix our mind upon Krishna and to become detached from the things that draw our mind away from Krishna, at the stage when there's hardly anything that draws our mind away from Krishna anymore, only we're absorbing our mind in Krishna consciousness, then our desire becomes stronger and stronger, because it becomes more and more pleasurable to think about Krishna. And therefore we become more and more anxious. Just like you don't have to tell a fish that it's a good thing he'd be in water. If you take him out of water, he's going to suffer. But as soon as you put him back in the water, he's actually quite happy to be in the water. He doesn't want to be in any circumstance outside the water again. He's developed a strong desire for water. So we can develop a strong desire for Krishna by suitable practice and by detachment. Anything else? Hvala Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.